Good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersey Joe. How are you doing on
I'm
this
doing just fine, getting
holiday?
ready for Thanksgiving. How about you?
As am I.
All right, you going to spend it with your family?
I'm gonna try.
Well, good. All right, and hopefully, you're going to have to travel. You're going to be in state or out of state.
I'm gonna travel out of state for the holidays.
Oh, good. All right. Well, hopefully the weather will stay with you, um, and you have a good trip coming and going and a good time, and don't eat too much. Anyway, we got a whole lot, as usual, a whole lot to talk about. Um, And again, for the first time listeners, the name of the show is The Situation with Jerzee Joe. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. You'll hear about news stories I know you haven't heard about, and you'll hear maybe a different perspective on some stories you maybe did hear about. My quote of the day will be from Navy Admiral Hyman Rickover. Susan, you ever heard of Admiral Hyman Rickover?
I have not.
All right, well, I'll tell you when we get to the quote of the day who he was. On our science minute, now that we're into winter, you're starting to see what they call the winter blend of gasoline, which is E85 or 10%. In some cases, it's 10%, or they have E85. Well, I'll talk about the trade-offs, what happens when you start using gasoline with ethanol, which may be a little cheaper, but why it might be costing you a minute. In our health minute, we'll talk about the brain and cognitive benefits of both physical and mental exercises. We'll talk about what happens if you've been working for the city of San Francisco for 20 years and doing a really good job, and what your reward for doing a good job for 20 years is in the city of San Francisco. And when I woke up this morning, I wasn't going to talk about this, but when I was working out today, I have CNN. Of course, we've had two mass shootings in a week. We had the one in Colorado Springs at the gay nightclub. Then we had one last night in Virginia. And I saw this headline on CNN, and they did a whole 15-minute segment about how we've had 606 mass shootings so far this year. And this is a lie that has been going on. A similar lie gets repeated every time there's a mass shooting. And we'll talk about where that ridiculous number comes from and why it's ridiculous. And our taxpayer relief shot today will be from Los Angeles in a Target store. Anyway, Admiral Hyman Rickover, he is known as the father of the nuclear navy. I believe he's deceased now, but he was the guy who got us into nuclear aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines, because before that it was all diesel. So Admiral Hyman Rickover is credited as, he's referred to as the father of the nuclear navy. Anyway, here's his quote, which I think is relevant, and there's a couple of ways you can look at it. Here's the quote. It is necessary for us to learn from the mistakes of others. You will not live long enough to make them all yourself. And you can take that a couple of different ways. One is that if you don't learn from the mistakes of others, you might wind up killing yourself. But even if you live a long and healthy life, there's a lot of mistakes that you'll never have time to make. So it's important that we learn from the mistakes from others. And I think there's similar quotes, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. But I just thought it was kind of a good reminder that we need to study history and learn from the mistakes of others. All right, moving on to our science minute. So winter blend gasoline, E85. You know what E85 means, Sue?
Yes, that it is 15% ethanol.
15% ethanol. And the typical, and by the way, not all older cars are compatible with E85. Some of the older cars, the gaskets and the O-rings were not compatible. And if you've got a 15-year-old car, you really don't want to be putting E85 in it. But even the standard winter blend is E10. But this reminded me, back in April of 2021, when gasoline prices started heading towards $4 a gallon, the Biden administration thought he'd do the American people a favor. And he announced in April of 2021 that he was going to allow gas stations to continue to sell the winter blend E85 year-round, which is 15% corn-based ethanol and 85% gasoline, claiming that would lower consumer gas prices by approximately 10 cents per gallon. And he was right. It is 10 cents a gallon cheaper. But did that save consumers money? Sadly,
No, it costs us money.
Sadly, the answer is no. And here's the quick math. The 15% ethanol blend is 5% less fuel efficient than regular gasoline, which means, 5%. So if your car normally gets 20 miles per gallon on regular, 5% less efficient means you only get 19 miles per gallon when running on a 15% ethanol blend. So how does that affect your pocketbook? Well, if your car's got a 15-gallon gas tank and you're getting 20 miles to the gallon using regular gas, and gas is $4 a gallon, it'll cost you $60 to fill your 15-gallon tank. And you'll be able to drive 300 miles on that 15 gallons, right? 15 gallons, 20 miles a gallon, 300 miles. And that works out to a fuel cost of 20 cents per mile driven at $4 a gallon. But now Biden did everybody a favor. He said, hey, you can now fill up with E85, which is only $3.90 a gallon. It's 10 cents a gallon cheaper, and 10 cents a gallon on your 15-gallon tank. At 10 cents a gallon, fill up your 15-gallon tank. How much are you going to save on your fill up, Sue?
Well, you're not really, because you're not going to be as efficient.
No, but just that pump. What's the pump? If you're saving 10 cents a gallon on a 15-gallon fill up, how much less will you pay at the pump?
$1.50.
$1.50. So instead of paying $60 to fill your tank, you're going to save a whole $1.50, and you'll only pay $58.50. Wow, I saved $1.50 because I'm only paying $3.90 a gallon for the ethanol. Mm-hmm. But your fuel efficiency has dropped to 19 miles per gallon. And instead of being able to drive the 300 miles you could have driven before, you'll only be able to drive 275 miles before your tank runs dry. And that works out to ding, 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 21.3 cents per mile, which is 6.3% more than it cost you to drive if you filled your car with regular gas at $4 a gallon. So in an effort to save consumers money, Biden actually made a bad situation worse, which is something that politicians typically do. So, and it's just sad that people were applauding, yes, we can buy gas for $3.90 a gallon instead of $4, not realizing it was actually going to drive up their cost of transportation. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but
no, I mean, there is a local mom and pop chain that is offering that for $1.99 this Thanksgiving week.
Right, and that's a heck of a deal, because
that's a heck of a deal.
Yeah. Now, 10 cents a gallon, you'd be insane to do it, but if you can save $1 or $1.50 a gallon, absolutely, and it's compatible with your car, absolutely go for it. But don't do it for 10, 12 cents a gallon. It is you're going to wind up wasting. You're going to spend more money than you're saving, so don't do it. All right, on to exercise and brain health. Now, so you ever heard about studies that said people who use their brains by doing crosswords or Sudokus or solitaire, it keeps them mentally sharp?
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Well, because you can equate a brain to the muscle, but there was another study I read last week, and it was actually, I think, funded by the Fitbit watch people. They didn't do this study, but they funded some university research. And here's the quote: "To test our hypothesis, we collected in aggregate roughly a century's worth of fitness data. We then asked participants to fill out surveys asking them to self-report on different aspects of their mental health. We also asked participants to engage in a battery of memory tasks that tested their short and long-term episodic, semantic, and spatial memory performance." And I won't bore you with all of the details, but it was overwhelmingly noticeable difference in their mental acuity, ability to recall things. And I'll try to get the link, or I'll ask Sue to maybe get the link up to this whole study on the Jerzee Joe website. But physical exercise absolutely contributes to mental acuity and alertness and better memory. And so, and we started off by talking about how brain exercises are good for you too. Well, I actually do both. When I go to the health club, I actually ride a bike that has a screen. And on the screen, I can play Sudoku, I can do solitaire, I can do crossword puzzles, I can do all sorts of stuff. So I actually do both. I'll work out on the bike, and while I'm working out on the bike with my legs, I'm doing brain puzzles on the screen. So if you want to stay sharp, if you're not old now, someday you will be. And if you want to stay sharp, mental activity and physical activity, if you combine the two, you'll enjoy your elder years. I like to think I'm still pretty sharp at my age, even though I began collecting Social Security many years ago. So I contribute some of that to, staying physically active and staying mentally sharp.
We talked about dogs last weekend and last week's episode. And this is true with dogs as well as many zoo animals. You'll notice that they put their food in different things, puzzles, to keep them mentally stimulated as well.
Mhm. Yep.
So it's
So,
true in all animals, not just humans.
right. So you got to exercise the brain as well as the muscle. So, and again, if you can combine the two, great. But if not, try to do both. All right. I wasn't going to talk about this either. I just learned about this today, but there's a guy named John Arts. He's been the director of elections in the city of San Francisco for 20 years. Now, director of elections, he's the number two under the commissioner of elections. He's been doing a good job in San Francisco for 20 years, city employee, elections director, great job reviews. And you know what his reward was after 20 years? Or what your reward is if you're a city employee in San Francisco for 20 years?
Well, you would think it would be something fabulous, but I think it's not.
Well, actually, the reward you get depends. Unfortunately, if you're a straight white male, you'll get fired to make room for somebody who isn't. And this is a quote from the story. Elections Commissioner Cynthia Dye, who voted not to renew Mr. Arntz's annual employment contract, said there was no performance-based reason for the commission's decision. She did not dispute that San Francisco had run free, fair, and functional elections for 20 years. Rather, she says it was time to open up this position to a more diverse field. The city, she said, could not make progress on its racial equity goals without opening up top positions. She goes on, our decision wasn't about performance, but after 20 years, we wanted to take action on the city's racial equity plan and give people an opportunity to compete for a leadership position. That was read from an email sent to the commission president, Chris Jordanek and Art. We also wanted to allow enough time for a fair and equitable process and conduct as broad a search as possible. Jordanek told Mission Local News that Arndt's level of performance did not factor into the decision, and he looked forward to retirement and wishing him well, et cetera, et cetera. But I just ironic that if you had been a gay Black woman, you'd still be in that job. But the one and only reason he's losing his job is because he's a straight white male.
It sounds like he has solid ground for reverse discrimination.
I would hope so. I really do hope. I mean, this is the most ludicrous thing I hope with, and I really hope this guy sues them for, lost pay, time reinstatement. I mean, I've never heard of anything so ridiculous in my life. We're firing you because you're a straight white male, and we want to open up your job for somebody who isn't. That's what it basically comes down to. So it just really, really aggravates me. All right. Moving on, while I was at the gym this afternoon, I wasn't going to talk about this either, but I'm sitting there and watching the TV screen. They get these TVs on the wall, and they got MSNBC on, and they're talking about the shooting at the Walmart in Virginia last night, where a manager walked into the break room with a pistol, not an AR-15, by the way, just a handgun, and shot and killed 6 people in the break room. And they're talking about mass shootings. And of course, this is, we had one in last Saturday in Chicago, in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. And they're flashing this graphic, and they're giving a list of mass shootings by year. And one of them says 606 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year, coming close to last year's record of 620. And then they list mass shootings for the past 10 years, and all these numbers are above 500, 520, 540, 585, 606, 620. And well, at 606, that's 2 a day, 14 a week, and 60 last month. Sue, can you rattle off the 60 mass shootings that we had last month?
No, like you said, I am aware of the 2 tragic events that happened this week, and I'm sure there's been probably a dozen or so that I can think of that I've heard in the media recently.
Well, how about 14? Can you recall 14 last week? Not even the names.
No.
Can you recall 14 mass shootings being reported in the last week?
No.
How about 14 the week before?
Nope.
14 any week so far this year?
No, I like I said, there might have been 14 that I've heard in the media all year.
And you would be correct. The number, by the way, interesting enough, the actual number is 14 year to date. And let me tell you where that number comes from. First of all, let's talk about the official US government definition. I talked about this in an earlier podcast. The US government has a definition which I think is very, very close to what most people think of when they hear the term mass shooting. And that US government definition is very simple. It's 4 or more victims killed at random by a single shooter in a public place. Now remember the elements: 4 or more victims, single shooter, at random, public place. Now, what does that exclude? Well, if you got 2 groups of gangbangers with multiple shooters, and they know each other, and the targets aren't random, on a Friday night in Chicago when they're taking pot shots at each other, and when the smoke clears, 4 of them wind up going to the hospital to be treated for minor gunshot wounds. Nobody died. It wasn't random. According to the outfit that does this 606 tracking, that's a mass shooting. And that outfit is called the Gun Violence Archive. They're a rabid anti-gun organization. I think they're funded by Michael Bloomberg. Whenever there's a mass shooting, they send out these press releases. They do a blast. They have all these TV stations nationally, locally. They do a blast. And every time there's a mass shooting, they do a blast for these ridiculous numbers. Same thing, if there's a domestic violence where an ex-husband, goes to his ex-wife's, parents' house, and his ex-wife is there with the parents, and, and he shoots the ex-wife and the parents, and maybe his brother, ex-brother-in-law. Maybe one person died. They call that a mass shooting. Now, when it's domestic violence, it's not random, it's not in a public place, and maybe there weren't even 4 fatalities, but they'll count that. Drug deals gone bad. You get a drug deal gone bad. 2 groups of buyers and sellers shooting each other. Doesn't matter, as long as 4 people got wounded or even nicked with a bullet, that's a mass shooting. So that's where they come up with this ridiculous 606 mass shootings lie so far this year, which it just aggravates the heck out of me. So for those who see the number and wonder where the heck they get that number from, again, go to Gun Violence Archive, and they actually have a list by day. You can actually click on each and every one. They have a link, and you'll see these things. 2 groups of nightclub emptying out at 2:00 in the morning. 2 guys get into it, and they pull out their guns and they start shooting at each other, and a couple of bystanders gets wounded. They call that a mass shooting event. Sue, would you consider that a mass shooting event?
No.
2 guys at
No,
a night.
like you said, I think the nightclub shooting in Colorado and the Walmart shooting in Virginia, those are,
yes,
I think,
those are
mass shootings.
Right. Oh, and by the way, you can actually download. I actually did a download. You can download into an Excel file of those 606 mass shootings. You want to guess how many there were zero? How many of the 606 there were 0 fatalities?
I don't know.
Try 189. 189 had 0 fatalities.
So
Another
was that 20%?
Yeah, and another 163 had 1 fatality. So more than half of their 606 had 1 or 0 fatalities. But that's how they get away. And of course, the media never even bothers to do a compare. They never even talk about how that number was arrived at and how it compares to the official US definition. But that kind of segues me into why blue states apparently don't want to give poor people the ability to carry a concealed weapon. So on one hand, if you believe the liberal thing that it's not safe to go anywhere because you could get shot and killed growing by a crazed gunman going to the grocery store, well, if you believe that, then you'd certainly want to go. If you're going to Walmart and you believe that there's a crazed gunman about to enter the store at any minute, you'd say, yeah, hey, I'd like to maybe have a concealed carry permit. So say you're a nursing student working a part-time job to put yourself through nursing school, or you're the head of a family with a household income that's near the poverty line, And because of that, you and your family live in a low income, high crime, government subsidized housing development. And because of all the muggings and other street crime in your neighborhood, you decided you'd be safer as you walk to the bus stop and you're waiting for your bus, or when you walk to the local market. By the way, 84% of people in the lowest quarter income bracket don't own a car. They rely on public transportation. So if you're walking to the bus stop, you're walking to the grocery store, they're going to the local bodega, and you live in a high crime neighborhood, or you're getting home after dark, you say, yeah, I'd like to have a concealed carry weapon. So let's say that you scrape together about the $300 or so necessary to buy a kind of a low end or used gun from your local gun store. Now, $300, that's probably better part of a week's pay if you're in the lower quarter of the income bracket. So now you're all set. All you need to do is just purchase the gun, submit your application. In a few weeks, you'll get your permit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. And that, by the way, that's the way it works in a lot of states. In fact, you're at
How it works in
26
my
states.
state.
In 26 states, by the way, you don't even need an official permit. They just say, hey, if you qualify, if you don't have any felonies, there's no restraining orders, blah, 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 you don't even need to get a permit. You either qualify or you don't. If you qualify, us documenting with a piece of paper doesn't add any value to the process. Well, if you live in a blue state like New Jersey or New York, buying that gun, when you go to buy that gun, the clerk in the store will first ask to see your FOID card. And you will ask, what's an FOID card? And he tells you, oh, it's a firearm owner's ID card that's issued to you by your local police department. So the next day you take some time off from work, go pick up your FOID card application. And the officer tells you that before you submit it, you need to have a set of digital fingerprints taken by a third-party fingerprinting firm that is 20 miles from where you live and costs $100. So now, even though you have the $300 to buy a gun, you now have to save up another $100. You have to book your fingerprinting appointment. And a day of appointment, take some more time off from work, because they only do this from 8 to 5. And hopefully have a friend who's willing to drive you in his car that 40-mile round trip if you'll pay for the gas and tolls. So a few weeks later, you finally receive your FOID card and go back to the gun store with your $300 to buy the gun. Now that you have your gun, you start working on the CCW application, discover that before you can submit the application, you have to complete a firearms proficiency test at a state-approved gun range. And you find that the closest state-approved gun range that administers a test is 35 miles away, not near any public transportation, which, by the way, and you couldn't take your gun on public transportation, even if there was a bus line that went there. And the cost of the test is another $150, plus the cost of a full box of ammunition you must shoot to complete the test. Not counting your round trip travel cost to the gun range, that just cost you another $175, because it was $150 for the test and $25 for the box of bullets you have to shoot. But wait, you'll also need to submit a 4-color passport pictures with your application. That's another $17. You then notice you must include a $50 money order payable to the state treasurer with your application. That's another $50. Then you have to save, so you've saved up the money for the test, the ammunition, the passport pictures, and you think you jump through all the hoops and you get a ride to the police station again because your application must be submitted in person. But when you do, the officer tells you that you also need to be, well, we talked about the fingerprinting. This is fingerprinted a second time. You already fingerprinted once when you got the permit to purchase the gun. He tells you that, you tell him, well, I just had my fingerprints taken 6 weeks ago. And he tells you that we can't use those fingerprints. That was for your purchase permit. You'll now have to get a second set of digital fingerprints for your concealed carry permit, even though they have the originals on file. So now you have to make arrangements to go back to the place you went to the first time and get your digital fingerprints taken again. And that's another $100. So assuming your friend is still willing to drive you round trip to that third-party fingerprinting agency, what does it cost you to get your gun and the CCW permit you need to carry it? Gun, $300. First set of fingerprints, $100. Proficiency test, $150. Ammo for the proficiency test and another box of ammo to practice for the test at $25 a box is another $50. Your 4-color passport photos, $17. A second set of fingerprints, another $100. Application fee, $50. And if you lost 8 hours of time and you're making $18 an hour, that's another $144. So you total all that up, and just to get your permit, you've spent not 300, and to buy your gun and get the permit, $886. And guess what? You still haven't bought any ammunition to load your gun with once you get your permit. So now you got to buy it and go spend at least $25. So now you're over $900. But that was just the state of New Jersey that only requires a 2-hour test. The state of New York requires that you complete a 16-hour training course that I believe is being offered for $550 in 4 4-hour sessions. So, and there's only like one place you can go in Manhattan to take it. Oh, and if you live in New York and you want to take the bus or subway to work because you don't have a car, well, don't even bother getting your permit, because guess what? Even if you got your permit, you can't take your concealed weapon on any bus or subway in New York. And where are you most likely to need a concealed carry permit? Walking to the bus stop, waiting at the bus stop, standing on the subway platform. So the places you need it the most, you'd never be able to take it. So if you're living in New York City and you're poor, or you're living near the poverty line, neither New Jersey nor New York want you to have a concealed carry permit, because it would cost you at least $900 to go through the process. And then once you get it, it's pretty worthless because you can't use it. Anyway, how are we doing on time, producer?
You have about 10 minutes left.
All right, well, tell you, let me try to squeeze this in.
I do, by the way, when you were talking about all this, I find it ironic that in New Jersey, you can't go to your local hardware store to buy blanks for your what do you call it? A ramrod nail gun thing.
Yeah, the ram nail. Yeah, I found that out when I got here a couple of years ago. I was trying to put some stuff on a concrete wall in my garage, and I went over to Home Depot to get some blanks. I got one of these ram set concrete nail where you put the blank in, you hit it with a hammer, and it puts the specially hardened nails in. And the guy says, "I need to see your FOID card." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You needed to buy blanks in New Jersey." Apparently, the city legislatures were afraid that gangbangers are going to take 22 blanks, put them and make a homemade zip gun and use them to fire bullets. Meanwhile, let me tell you, ridiculous. I can drive over to Pennsylvania in about 18 minutes. And once I go over the Delaware River, there's a gun store right over the river. I can pull off and I can walk in. I can buy a pallet load, literally a pallet load of ammunition, and don't even have to show a library card. They don't know who I am. They don't care who I am. So in 18 minutes, I can buy myself or any gangbanger in New Jersey can buy a pallet load of ammunition. But if you want to buy some 22 blanks for your nail gun, you need to go through the process I just described to buy blanks.
Now, do you know the hunting regulations in New Jersey? Are they as bizarre? Because it is hunting season. It's currently bear season, and deer season starts next week.
I haven't even, I'm familiar with some of my friends that you can't use a rifle in New Jersey because they think the houses are too close. So you have to use a shotgun with buckshot, which has a limited range. There's all sorts of regulations about transporting your gun. If in New Jersey, if you don't have a trunk, if you're driving an SUV, either your gun or the ammunition has to be in a box with a padlock on it. You can't have your ammunition and the gun in the same car unless one's under lock and key. So it's just
and
crazy.
Isn't it cruel to kill a bear or a deer with a shotgun?
No, like if you hit a bear or deer with a load of buckshot, double-aught buck at 20 yards, that'll kill him instantly. So no. By the way, they had
nicer to just shoot a single bullet and
it is a single high-powered rifle round would be certainly more deadly. So. All right. By the way, it looks like we're going to run out of time here, so I better get to our taxpayer relief shot. And I call them taxpayer relief shots because when the good guy with the gun shoots the thug and kills him, it saves the taxpayers the cost of a jury trial, court-appointed attorney, send the guy to jail for 80 grand a year, who knows, 5 years. And if he gets out, then there's a probationary cost. But I'd like to... not only do I call them taxpayer relief shots, there's a couple of sheriffs down in Florida. Let me play one from Santa Rosa. This is the sheriff of Santa Rosa, California. Let me tell you how he feels about shooting bad guys. Here we go.
somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
That's one of my favorite quotes, but I got another one from a different sheriff. This is Sheriff Grady Judd, and he has a slightly different take on it. Here we go. Come on, Sheriff Judd.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
Now, I think we both agree he meant to say Swiss cheese, but you get the general idea. So those are two sheriffs in Florida. They both encouraging you to shoot the bad guys. Anyway, this story comes from a Target store in downtown Los Angeles, where a homeless guy walks into a store, walks over to the kitchen section, kitchen utensils, grabs a butcher knife off the display rack and starts stabbing people. And here's how the story goes.
We have breaking news at 11 o'clock. Terror at a local Target store. A man with a knife going on a violent rampage, stabbing multiple people, including a child. All happening at the 7th and Fig Shopping Plaza, located in between LA's tallest skyscrapers. An armed security guard opening fire as shoppers run for their lives. Eyewitness News reporter Jory Rand live in downtown LA with new video and new information. Jory.
Mark, there are a lot of people who are afraid to come to downtown Los Angeles out of fear it is just too dangerous. That reality playing out this evening when a madman stole a knife and told a 9-year-old boy he was going to kill him and then tried to do it. LA's homeless crisis seeming to claim another victim. A man who's believed to be homeless entered the downtown Target Tuesday evening, grabbed a large knife off the shelf, and went on a stabbing spree, starting with a 9-year-old boy.
Told him, the young boy, that he was going to stab him and kill him. He repeated that more than once. The young child attempted to flee and leave, ignore him, and move away. When the suspect, without any further provocation, suddenly attacked and stabbed this young child in the back, deep laceration on his left shoulder.
Good Samaritan stepped in to help the boy, but the attacker moved on to a group of young women, attacking one of them with the knife.
Stabbed brutally in the chest, in the front portion of her chest, causing her to fall to the ground.
Again, Good Samaritan stepped in, this time dragging the woman into the pharmacy and shutting the gate behind her. The attacker then made his way to the front of the store where an armed security guard confronted him.
He was acting like he was going to stab him, and security was trying to tell him to back off. But he lunged at security with his knife, and I saw he got shot.
The guard is believed to have fired a single shot, but it proved deadly. The attacker did not survive. As for his victims, Chief Moore said he visited the boy's parents at the hospital and reported he's in stable condition, but may have suffered neurological damage.
All right, I'm going to turn it. There's another minute and a half to go. By the way, we call that fired a single shot. We call that DRT, dead right there. Died at the scene, dead right there. And by the way, that Target wasn't a standalone store. That Target was in a big shopping mall with 20 or 30 other stores. And interesting note that New Jersey now, the legislature is back in session. They're trying to pass legislation making shopping malls one of the places that, if they have given you a concealed carry permit, you can't take it into a shopping mall. So just like New York City, where you can't take it on a bus or a subway, no, you can't take it into a shopping mall. So they're trying to make it as worthless as possible.
And yet, so many of the mass shootings that you hear about, and I'm talking about the government definition of mass shooting, happen in shopping malls.
In shopping malls or supermarkets, and so New Jersey is trying to do everything they can to neuter this and make your concealed carry permit as worthless as possible. Anyway, I know we only got a few minutes left, so I should probably wrap unless you have anything you want to add, Sue.
No, I just want to wish all our listeners a safe and happy holiday.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank everybody who took the time to listen to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. I hope you found them as interesting as I did. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, hopefully producer Sue, I know it's a holiday, maybe by Monday she can get them up on the website. And the website is Jerzee Joe, it's Jersey with a Z, Jerzee, JerzeeJoe.com. And if you want to send me an email with questions or requests, I can send you a link. If you want me to privately send you a link, it's real simple. It's just joe@jerseyjoe.com. Again, JERZEE, JerzeeJoe.com. And just Joe, and I can send you things directly, but hopefully this, Sue will have a bunch of this stuff up on the website. And with that, I'm done, unless Sue, you got anything to add?
Nope. Don't eat too much turkey.
You too. All right. Be good. Talk to you next week, Sue.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Here we go.